Good evening, all. We from SREC welcome you all for this fifth webinar series. We welcome Principal Ma'am and all staffs of SREC and other friends. Today, our speaker, Mr.Siddharth Nair, is a 2007-2011 BE Biomedical Engineering from our college, and then he has pursued his ME from CEG campus, Anna University. And he's currently pursuing his doctoral research in the area of collaborative medical devices innovation, with the focus of product design, development, and sustainability at Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. Good evening, Siddharth.
Good evening, sir.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So, good evening, all. I know it's a Sunday, and the topic is also kind of a hot cake going on, given the COVID scenario that the world is facing, right? And it's kind of a tragic case because, unfortunately, we were never prepared. But then another thing that we need to learn is we are never prepared for such pandemic, and we need to really work from the start to really be ready for any of this kind of scenario. Because last time when there was a Spanish flu in 1918s, we were in the similar case, right? And a lot of deaths happened, a lot of people active. So this particular chart I've just put in, that's based on today's data from WHO website. If you see on the left, the blue cases all are the active cases, where the deep blue is basically 3 lakh plus cases, and the lighter blue are the numbers reducing, and in the other side it's death. There's a good correlation between both, with some few places which are different, like for example Greenland area where the populations are low, the deaths have been low, right? So anything like they have done anything better than us or something like that. So that's the whole scenario that we are facing. During this time, I've divided my presentation into 3 parts. One is pre-COVID, what was the case during the COVID, and now post-COVID, what would be the opportunities and challenges. So I'll just try to, it's just 10 slides, more talk and very less in content in terms of slides. So any questions, you can just interrupt me then and there and ask questions. So going forward with that. So when we look at healthcare pre-COVID and specifically looking at the Indian contribution towards the healthcare market, we have 4 distinct things that we look at. One is pharmaceuticals. Fortunately, Indian pharmas are among the best in the world, and the reason why it is best, because in 70s pharmaceuticals did pick up very well, and we really did very good job in terms of biotech at that time, as well as the B.Pharm, and all those degrees that we gave during that time was really worthwhile, and a lot of companies boomed in pharma, and India is among the leaders. There is no doubt in it. However, even pre-COVID, when it comes to Indian pharma research, Indian pharma has been more towards the generic drugs rather than innovating on their own to make some drugs. So that's always been a problem with Indian pharma and R&D, and this is pre-COVID I'm talking about. And when it comes to hospital and healthcare, so I'll just take both hospital healthcare and wellness together. So wellness generally is all the alternative therapies and everything that comes together. When it comes to wellness, we are good. But this wellness is mostly for all the foreign population or all the foreign patients that come to India to get treated. And it's a lucrative market, of course, because they pay you high. And that's why it's grown a lot when it comes to the foreign population. And of course, the affluent Indians as well as people from the middle class and all do enjoy it occasionally, the wellness of wellness through Ayurveda or naturopathy, or you can take any such alternative therapy, and it works. But when it comes to hospital and healthcare, our condition has been bad, and it's been bad for not now but since a long time. Given a scenario where we have just 1 doctor per 1 lakh, and yet when in 90s and early 2000, when ISRO was taking a lead on telemedicine, where they dedicated a satellite and everything for that. It never, and unfortunately again technology was a problem during that time, but even otherwise it never picked up. And right now if you see the COVID cases, especially the comorbid patients, that is people who have diabetes and other chronic illness, and along with COVID, they are at the most highest risk. And those population altogether will be more than about 25-30% of total population of India having these chronic diseases. And it's been a very tough journey if you look at currently, especially in Bangalore, Chennai, Mumbai. Bangalore is recent, but Chennai, Mumbai, Delhi, and we all know the cases over there. But when it comes to medical device, we are the worst, really to speak, because medical devices per se, 80% of devices in medical are imported. And in this 80%, almost 100% of mid-tech to high-tech products are imported. Only the low-tech products have been designed and developed in India. And that's been a very unfortunate scenario. But that scenario doesn't only prevail in medical device, but anywhere where hardware comes in. Unfortunately, we don't go there. Unfortunately, our ecosystem is not supporting enough, and we are really not able to handle hardware devices on any count as such. Most of it that happens even in the systems level is in software, and that's why automobile software and everything is being developed here, but hardware doesn't come out here. So this is the pre-COVID scenario that we had. And if you see already, we can show these gaps, which is going to be the challenges in future also. But then what happened suddenly during lockdown time? I'll just get into that slide. So this is how the lockdown actually happened. As soon as lockdown happened, people started panicking. People started to hear words like ventilators, respirators, aerosols, and all such words. And not knowing how it goes about, people started to design things for emergency, which actually I don't know is good or bad, but the results has been bad. That's the case. Now, for example, in New York, in various part of the country, across the world, people started to make a ventilator splitter. So where one ventilator can be connected to, let's say, 5 patients, and then people started to make this NEMA motor based or your stepper motor based so-called low-cost ventilator, which even our good company Mahindra claimed that my ventilator for 7,500 rupees is ready. Unfortunate again. And then people started to work on all intubations, all kind of shields and everything without seeing this thing. So I'm not against any of these things that were being tried, but what I feel sad about is without knowing its implications, people started to design this, and that's something which is very sad. And it didn't happen only in India, but it happened globally. So we can't blame only India for this, but globally this was the scenario. People didn't understand and they wanted to help, but then as we all read in news that people who were in ventilators, especially looking at the New York case, they were the highest number of people who actually died because of the respiratory infection. Technically, yes, oxygen levels were going down, but then we started to try and tackle the symptom rather than tackling the actual source. So these are small things that happened because we didn't think through while designing these prototypes at that time. And seriously speaking, medical device is not so simple, and we all know that, fortunately. But overall, the population doesn't know, and our Indian ecosystem didn't handle that well. But again, not blaming anyone, but this is what happened in lockdown. And this led into a lot of chaos. And second part of the chaos was even when people were trying out all these things, the portable ventilator or bead splitter. Splitter was luckily 3D printer, so they could do it, but they were not able to get the materials. The spools were missing. If you look at, so I'm talking about the spool now. It's just a material, right? It's just a polymer. Unfortunately, we didn't have any facility which could even manufacture the 3D printing spools over there, and we are importing all of those from China and other countries like Taiwan, SREC, so on and so forth. And we didn't have even the polymer that a 3D printer would need. Secondly, if you see this component for the portable ventilator, let's say, were not available, walls not available, and so on and so forth. See, I'm showing the challenges, but in this challenges lies opportunity as well, because this all these things on its own is a business. If someone tries to start just the own, but only thing is someone has to take the initiative and start, put up a plan to develop it. Though all these are challenges, it's not demotivating. It all shows the opportunities that we have. So now, given the scenario where we are in sort of a pseudo war with China, these things are going to be more and more difficult. These are like very basic mechanical components, and I'm sure we are good at mechanical, but or electromechanics, but it's not coming out. Like say the NEMA motor, NEMA is a standard, so motors that we use for stepping, those are not made in India, and that means that during this COVID scenario, when things were not flying in or out, we were not getting any of the components that we could need. So that was an unfortunate scenario. And similarly, other things also worked that way. But as I told you, scope for improvement. But just before we go on the opportunities that we have currently, uh, the major thing that I could understand is the lack of understanding of broader view of what is medical systems per se. So when as soon as medical systems come in, we think of CT, MRI, great. But when it comes to a holistic picture of medical system, we need to really understand the value of diagnostics, preventions, progression monitoring, therapies, surgical equipment, so on and so forth. So these all are the broader views, and each of this broader view has a risk involved with it. But unfortunately, as a consumer, we don't understand this risk and associated quality management that comes with it, and thereby we end up compromising on the quality so that we get some low cost product. But then it's not the same way like how other things work, and we as an Indian consumer, we need to start understanding this quality issues, otherwise it will have a very bad health or bad impact on medical devices. So though the cost is critical, but we cannot go for a unbranded or a uncertified devices per se from the market to just go and buy for it. So these things have been critical, and the opportunities are, so basically if you look at opportunities, best part in healthcare is the needs have not changed for even last 100 or 200 or 300 years. Needs are more or less the same for healthcare, but what changed is the technology, and how do we utilize this technology to cater to the need differently. That's innovation over here right now. But overall, the need is same. For example, if a baby is prematurely born, we still need an incubator. Even 100 years back we needed an incubator. So needs really have not changed much. If we have fever, we still need a thermometer. Back then also we needed a thermometer. So it's very similar needs that we are dealing with. But what changed is the technology that's grown over a period of time, and thereby there are a lot of scopes of innovation in medical devices. But as soon as we understand that, and we look at the need based scenario, it will be very difficult for us to come up with successful devices. And that's what whole of my PhD was all about, trying to understand how do we really innovate in medical devices. And when it comes to medical system designs per se, uh, I'm sure all of us know going into a space is very complex, or making an aeroplane is very complex, or making an automobile is very complex. And medical devices is no other this thing. It's not like a consumer electronics or anything. The regulatory requirements are probably stringent. Probably material requirements are little relaxed, but all the safety requirements are really stringent because human life gets involved in it. So when it comes to systems design, unfortunately, the skilled manpower for the entire medical industry is very low. Though we have courses of biomedical engineering and bioengineering, medical electronics, so on and so forth worldwide, most of these courses have been designed for the hospital ecosystem, so maintenance of hospital and things like that. And when it comes to mechanical electronics, the general field, or the the original engineering, when it comes to uh, the nitty-gritties are still missing. So again, unfortunately, during the dot-com bubble and the IT boom, the entire core industry moved towards IT for better good, and thereby we missing the critical skills when it comes to hardware and engineering systems. So that's where medical system designs are lacking these days a lot, and we really need now people to understand that and start developing indigenous systems so that next pandemic at least we are good. And I'll come to the next slide where we talk about more of it. But and most important critical factor in medical device is empathy. So we need to understand it's not any other engineering problem that we are solving, but we are solving a problem of another human. So only if we understand what is the problem, we can really give a proper solution for this entire case. So that's why empathy becomes one of the most critical things when it comes to healthcare. Forward, I've put like kind of a blank canvas when it comes to opportunities of post-COVID, because actually speaking, it is an endless opportunity that's actually coming up in front of all of us, with regards to how the treatment will happen, what's gonna go on. People will not no more prefer to just go to a hospital which is rated and get themselves treated. So a lot of things are changing post COVID, and this is a kind of an era where both hardware, software, intelligence, all things has to come together to cater to the healthcare scenario. So there are almost very few companies worldwide who are working on these kind of solutions which can work, which can give you a treatment remotely or give you a diagnostics remotely. So it's a kind of a blank canvas. And when it comes to India, just because of the advantage of the youth that we have, and if we are able to train them well, be it the ones who just graduated or be who are going to graduate, we can actually innovate like anything and serve the global market. And that's where the power of people will come when it comes to India. And we have a very good opportunity post COVID per se, but again we have a lot of challenges as well. So when I'm talking about opportunities, I'm not talking about the old technologies like MRI, CTs, and everything. Those are done. Obviously, there is always incremental innovation that can happen in that. I'm not denying that fact, but I'm talking about the new ones, like say, if you look at RF imaging that's coming up, or you take any other new things. Like for example, we are working on a new technology where we are talking about the power of FNIRS for brain imaging or brain mapping. So there are a lot of new technologies that are feasible now, and that's feasible not because people earlier could not think of it, but it is feasible because of the technological advancement that the world has made. But again, as I told you, with all the opportunities comes challenges, and it's all about how do we tackle all these challenges that are coming up in front of us. And I'll just give you my company's case study of what we saw and what we did during COVID as the next couple of slides. So if you see, the first challenge is the raw materials. Where do we get the raw materials from? Be it a motor, be it a valve, all these are basic things. We just need a good quality valve so that we comply to the ISO 13485 norms that medical device requires to do it. Hardware ecosystem is negligible in India. We have, but it's all distributed and very negligible in India. And still we'll be like dependent on semiconductors from abroad. Though IIT Madras, IISc Bangalore, and IIT Delhi have some provides in terms of nanotechnologies, and they have good fabrication facility, but still they are not ready for kind of industrial grade manufacturing of semiconductors. The third point is the most difficult thing that I see: R&D and the trained plus skilled professionals. Fortunately, we have some good training in IT and software, but when it comes to training in hardware and research, that's something that we are lagging. And I understand that it's not just because of the educational institute or the student or the faculty. It's a system that we are talking about, where we are talking about the government funding for research, everything that's coming in picture. Unfortunately, for next 1.5 years, most of the research funding is getting diverted to COVID-19 scenarios. That means any new innovations will have to struggle, and that we were one among those. And I'll tell what we are doing for that. But yeah, we need to have trained and skilled professionals. So recently, as a company, we needed a couple of candidates so that we could develop our product. And the sorry state was we got 1,500 plus applications, and we could only take 1 or 2 people who were actually ready to work with us, at the same time good at the skills that we were looking at. So that's the kind of sorry case. So when I'm telling a startup looking at skills, imagine the multinationals looking at the skills. It's nowhere a match, an unfortunate scenario that exists. IoT menace, and this has been the next big thing. Everywhere we're talking about IoT, 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 IoT. But one big thing that I feel IoT is failing would be the cost, because currently the cloud computing cost or the computational cost of all the processing is very high. That means the solutions would not be kind of affordable to people, and if we want to make affordable, we'll have to burn investor money. That means the company will not be sustainable, and the solution will now sooner or later go out of market. So we need to really work out on the architecture and infrastructure to really get IoT in place. Otherwise, we're talking about IoT everywhere, including healthcare, and even our company is doing it. So we have thought about our own things, what we are going to do, but all have to think about it. Product development, I'm not getting too much into it. As I told you, our ecosystem needs to be trained. Companies need to take an initiative along with the academic institutions, I believe. But how it will work, I don't know. Probably if we brainstorm on that, we can come up to some solution on to it. But product development, especially when it comes to complex systems, be it medical, be it space, be it aeronautics, be it automobile, complex system development is a little tricky part, and we need to have a better training. And finally, but most important part is the investment, infrastructure and capital. So we don't have liquid capital available, which becomes very difficult for a hardware industry to thrive, nor do we have enough space. So how do we handle the infra and capital is one big question. But second big question is investment, and unfortunately a lot of money is in China, and right now the anti-China sentiments is gonna be a tough job for any new company to take investment from China, just to avoid the marketing hiccups that can come up with it. So investments are getting trickier and trickier, and unfortunately the government norms on FDI are not so clear. So foreign investors are really thinking of it. So for example, when we are trying to get some FDIs on board, and the norms and government policies on it is not really helping us at all. So just a small case of what our company did during lockdown. So we were actually involved in developing of a combinational system which could kind of diagnose, monitor progression, prevent and treat diabetic neuropathy. And we were looking at making a big hardware and a complete ecosystem around it and take it to market, and we were raising funds for that. And there were a couple of deals which were almost to close as well, and that's when the COVID comes in. So we were also pitching for certain grants which we were about to get and things like that. And then COVID came in. Most of the investments dried out because of the scenario. So they were only looking at funding the emergency designs and not all the designs like what we did, but only whatever is relevant to COVID, like say CPAP, that is positive airway pressure ventilators, or negative pressure ventilators, or you take respirators or any other COVID related things. It was easier to get money. But if you're doing something different, it became very challenging. So now when this scenario came in, we came into a standstill. In fact, it was such a scenario that March, April, I had no idea how do we go about it. Should we close the company? Kind of a very depressing time, no clue what's going on around. And that's when we had to actually get back to our drawing board and see the system once again, and kind of look at it from an eye of both business as well as technology, and how do we handle it. And when we put all the constraints together, things started to, make sense. And when it made sense, and we hired people who are good and, from big schools, good colleges, good experience, good projects. We could hire them. We just took the opportunity of this kind of thing. Probably normal time it would have been very difficult to hire any of these people, but we could hire these people during this COVID time. And of course, Prashant is my brother, but all others, I didn't know them much before they joined us. And now when we looked at the same problem, with all the constraints put together, we came up with an exciting different solution, which looks much more easier to deal with, and we could also accelerate the product commercialization process. And what happened is, we just relooked at the diabetic neuropathy scenario. So neuropathy is basically nerve degeneration, and diabetes we all know. So what we found out is, when it comes to diabetic neuropathy, one of the biggest or critical scenario becomes foot ulcers. So we started to relook at all these constraints together along with the problem that we were trying to solve. And when we did it, this answer, we got an answer where, can we develop a footwear which would have embedded systems into it, where it could actually look at wellness part, where it could say massage, it could give therapies, it could sense what are the pressures, thereby avoiding foot ulcers, which are generally for about 10% of diabetic patient, and kind of amputation. So 10% of foot ulcers can lead to 5% of the foot ulcers can actually lead to amputation. So can we prevent all these things along with arthritis? So and obesity as an derivative market out of it, and we could see that there is something going good into it, investors validating that yes, this is a good market to look at, market accepting that yeah, it is looking at. So we started to relook at how do we talk to the users and understand this process, everything. And thankfully the team has capability to design and build it. So we of models which could be used for your regular shoes or regular workplace, rather than the older diabetic footwear which used to look ugly come into picture, and we do a completely different job. And when we looked at competition, we could see that there are good footwears, but no one has entered this kind of market where electronics are embedded into it and looking at healthcare and wellness all together. So now we've started to kind of do the user study to see how the concept makes sense to people, and how things would happen and all those things. And if everything goes well, we expect that the MVP, the minimum viable product, should be at least getting into market by end of December or early Jan, and with Kickstarter campaign getting into by October end. So that's the kind of timeline that we are working with it, and the team is good, so we are hopeful that we can do. And that's what excited me during this COVID time, and all these things we could do during this time. I guess I have taken exactly 30.
Thank you, Naveen.
Yeah, I can take questions.
Yeah, Naveen, this is Nagarajan here.
No, that should be Siddharth actually.
Sid,
Yeah.
are you able to hear me?
I can.
Okay. So, what is the kind of security we have in this IoT and the shoe or whatever you're designing? So, what kind of data is used and how the security will be handled? So does IoT have any security protocol which has been defined already, or is it just the existing one?
So basically, US FDA has given some rules regarding it when it comes to AI and data security. Other governments have not given any kind of regulation. So right now, the best thing is to just utilize what's available. But we are trying to work on a completely new level, a different level of encryption, such that the data privacy and data security is there. And we don't want to actually store a lot of data in our servers. Instead, we would like to serve it in users server, so data belongs to them and we don't own it. So that's the kind of model we are trying to look at it, with all necessary analysis that has to be done along with it. But again, when we look at data, we are not bothered about the location and things like that, but we are more worried about how your body is actually responding to the treatment, or how is the pressure in the body and things like that. At least at the moment, there is nothing wrong that's happening with those kind of data. But again, as I told, to reduce the cost of processing, to reduce the cost of storage, we are working on a completely new way of decentralization over there, such that the data will be like really small, at the same time encrypted differently in a proprietary manner. So that's something which we are working on it.
Okay. Actually, what you said was clear except one thing. So you said the user server, right? What do you mean by user server? So is it the end user server you're talking about, or any company which is taking up your product, that kind of server you're talking about?
No, so basically, sorry, end users, I didn't, server you're talking about, survey you're talking about, no?
Server. You talked about user server, right? Storing data in
Okay.
user server.
Yeah. So something like a WhatsApp model, so where WhatsApp allows you to back up in, say, Google Drive or something like that,
Okay.
but
Okay.
on user account and not a WhatsApp server.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ed. It was a very informative session. Thanks very much for it.
Thank you. Any other question?
Yeah, Siddharth, I'm Vasanth. Next question. Like, what is the market share of India in the field of medical equipments, and how far we are developing in that particular field?
So when you tell market share, in the sense, how much we make or how much we use?
How much we make in the manufacturing field?
Okay, so when it comes to making, based on the reports from BIRAC and other industrial organizations from Government of India, they are telling only 20% of medical device equipment needed are being made in India, or even designed, imported. And this, well, here it's all about high, low, medium tech, everything. But out of this 20%, more than 90% is the low tech that has been designed in India. So anything which is high tech or mid tech, that is not done in India. So when I say low tech, it means, let's say, ECG, or say tongue depressor, dental chair. These are some simple example of low tech. Medium tech would be something like ablations. You have this radio frequency signals that could burn your tissues and all those things. So those are medium tech. So none of those are actually coming up in India, or even designed in India at the moment.
Okay. Even on the low tech, you mean to say we are not that price competitive?
No, low tech we are price competitive. Yeah, but Frederick, you have a question, because I can see a raised hand.
It's not a question. If I can add some points to the discussion what you
Sure.
have made.
Sure.
It was a nice presentation, by the way. Thank you for the insights. When we talk about market share in medical equipment, we were talking about MRI, CT. The reason behind very low amount of development that happens in India is first the infrastructure and the capital. You saw in one of your slides, you mentioned challenges post-COVID or something. The first point was raw materials. Actually, according to me, it's not raw materials. It is investment and capital, because that drives the raw material, according to me. Which is mean there is no money in India where people can invest in high-risk businesses or high-risk medtech businesses. For example, CT, MRI, all these falls under, or even NMR, whatever it is, falls under high risk. you and me very well know what would be the investment that will go for a medical device development for sure.
Yeah.
Even if we talk about a very basic diagnostic or a therapeutic tool, that is the very initial reason why there are no much therapeutic tools comes out of Indian market. Otherwise, if there are people are flowing in, we incremental innovation will always happen. There are other reasons we have to look in the direction of disruptive innovation. Whether can I solve this clinical need in a different way, not by using existing method. There are certain applications which can be solved only which is applicable for Indian healthcare setting. Because ultimately we innovators have to think with the medical economy and the healthcare system. We have to develop solutions for the economy, and it should be economic centric. And raw material, I may come back to later. We always walk to China. That's completely true. Even I have a very recent experience, not before anti-China or whatever crisis it is. Some of my team members sitting down right now in India, actually, they were coming back to me. 20% of some of the components what we are doing right now, we have to import it from India, from China, especially something related to battery and so on. It was not an eruption about anti-China or something. Because of COVID situation, we had problems of logistics, so we didn't want to actually stop the production. What I just said, ask them, spend 2 days, go look into different marketplaces in India. We were able to find really a better manufacturer from Ahmedabad, like the regions around Gujarat. We have really excellent. The problem is we don't have a very good marketplace, online marketplace like you see in Alibaba or AliExpress. Once you enter into Google, the first thing that pops up is Alibaba, AliExpress. That is one thing. And I've also noted one other point. Yeah.
No, one second, I'll just interrupt here for a second. It's not only about the component being an alternative component being available, but it's also about does it qualify the quality norms that we need in medical device. So though we can use it for prototype or initial pilots when we don't have certificates in place, but when we are looking at a bigger picture, those small things which would matter much into the overall system quality, that we fail. And that's why my initial point of raw material coming into picture again. Like, do we have the qualified vendors who can give, let's say, 13485 complied components?
Yeah, so it is
again, just the QMS, but yeah.
I think it is again individual specific. For example, there is one of the other products we are developing for a minimally invasive surgical solution back with the Europe base. So this particular raw material, I was very specific to procure only from India. We already had a China-based manufacturer. When we actually procured this, we had a proper CE certified device, which is part of our device. It was procured directly from Ahmedabad. So we took so much of time in actually identifying them whether they were certified or not. But still, I think it is just about that. I know you and me very well have a mentality. I need to find a supplier just in 5 to 10 minutes for our component. No, we maybe just dedicating our team members. This will really end up in. And I have a very different opinion on handling COVID situation in India. I'm not right now in India. So I see, or as an outsider, I always see this as a different perspective. India has been handling really good. People in India are like administering, because the healthcare system in India is not economy driven. We are community driven healthcare system. We have already got several experiences in handling situations like COVID. It's not COVID, polio, whatever it is. We have very good experience on it, and India did a very good job. So I would just give the chance for others. Thanks.
Yeah, but again, as I told, the 3 months since you're not here, you may not have an idea about what went on internally. But given that I was with ISC and working with the government system, it was a kind of a nightmare when it came to healthcare and how things got handled. Yeah, fortunately everything looked good and everything went on well, so happy for that. But still the risks were very high that we were talking at that time, or even now actually. Now suddenly, let's say, like, the way the cases have increased in Bangalore, it's been too high.
Yeah, no, I'm simply comparing the 1.3 billion population in India to the ratio of the flattening of curve. I'm just comparing statistics and few measures that was taken. Maybe that's right. Internally, I don't know.
Yeah, stats show we did good, but there are other parts of stats also, right, which we generally don't look. Ravina, you had some question?
When Frederick was mentioning about the stats, so I can only be politically right since the recording is also going on. We know what the stats are really. So as simple as that. So the problem here is, I don't want to take the show away, but the problem here is the educated masses have to really be in a place where we have to educate others. So, but the mindset is such, it is a very defensive mindset. When being educated and you try to educate, even my neighbor, if I'm going to go and tell him, like, put on a mask, he doesn't take it seriously. So
Exactly. This point I agree with you.
So that is the precise problem that we are actually dealing with. But apart from that, if it's just about the numbers, okay, I'm not talking about anything else. Apart from that, if you're going to really focus on those numbers, I and you and everybody who's actually listening here know what the true fact is. Period. So coming back to the topic, Sidhu, what do you foresee as the challenges when it comes to mass production of any prototype or any POC after it's being certified? I know that getting the ICMR or the FDA certifications is not cakewalk. It takes a lot of effort and time. But once that is done, so when it comes to the mass production or when it comes to kind of reaching the masses phase, so what is the problems or what is that you foresee and how can we correct?
Sure. So actually, getting certification, I agree, it's not cakewalk, but at the same time, it is not written rules how to go about it. Only thing is we don't know the rules, right? But when it comes to manufacturing, the major problem, as I told you, one was the way our manufacturers handle their processes has been a problem, and it looked at quality. But then there are a couple of facilities which has come up in Mysore, Vizag, one in Chennai, where they are kind of world-class facilities. But then they are very few to start with, and they don't have everything that we need. So if it becomes a distributed manufacturing, as a startup, it would become very difficult to tackle so many people at the same time and get our work done. Whereas if it's a big team, it's easier. So that's one challenge that we see. But manufacturing in terms of the traditional ones, it's not that tough as such, except for the thing that the markets, though we look at 1.3 billion people, but in medical device, when it comes, the market is not 1.3 billion people, right? So let's say if it is a medium technology company product, probably 10,000 will get sold at the most, or 1 lakh will get sold at the most in India. So these small mindsets are what has to be fine tuned actually, and that is right now a little missing.
So Sidhu, coming back to the entrepreneur's perspective, my question here again is like, what is the amount of capital that you would raise for your company, and what is the market size that you're looking for, and what is the equity split that you typically be ready to put on the table?
See, as such, like any other company, the same scenarios for all other things. But when it comes to market size, the market that I am tackling is exciting because I'm looking at consumer healthcare. At the same time, risk increases. But the market is big. Both target market is big and serviceable market is big. But at the same time, given that it is consumer healthcare, the risk adds on to it.
Fine,
Right? Because consumer health.
Yeah, just tell me the number. What is the amount of investment that you are looking for in the pre-seed or the seed or the first round?
So in the seed, we are looking for 3 crores.
Vasanthana, I presume this is the right time for us to kind of start off with other group that we were discussing on, and I think we also have the first startup that where we can invest. Period.
Sure.
I think it's a financing round, Siddharth. Maybe you have pitched. People are ready to invest. I don't know.
I am happy if investment comes from here. I don't have to run across all the places, right?
Going by just the common sense, like anyone would love to put on a footwear if I am going to price it anywhere between 1,500 to 5,000 rupees. So the amount of people who's going to kind of get that footwear and put it on is not going to come down. Only thing is you need to just position yourself in the right brand of marketing, where I think that should
You are getting to the point.
that should be a cakewalk. Okay, so having said that, I mean, I don't know about the product. I just only saw the footwear's design, so I like the design. Whenever the product is coming out, I would love to be the first customer. Period.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
Even be it the gunny pig, if it is going to be Siddharth who is going to lead the development work.
Oh, that you can be very much sure, because it's not my first product, thankfully.
Vasanthana, on a serious note, like off the call, we will again discuss and
Yes.
we see if we can kickstart something.
Sure.
Yeah, Siddharth. This is
Yeah.
Thomas. Right now, all countries point fingers with China, and we are made to believe that other countries are going to just like that leave China and look for some other opportunities in some developing nations. And India is also looking at that. People will come to India. In case if that happens, is really India capable of tackling those things? Whether China was doing a wonderful job in manufacturing. And do you think that India can support that or be an parallel manufacturing hub for the world?
So that's a very good question. So the thing is, there is a good chance that people can move out of China, just like how people moved out of Japan. If you remember earlier, a decade ago or 2 decades ago, Japan was everything. Made in Japan, a craze that was going on, and everything. And then slowly it moved to China, and US made it happen. So it's not like it's impossible to move out, but truthfully, there have been alternative places that has been developing onto it, like Vietnam, Indonesia, Mexico, Thailand to an extent. So they are actually doing certain things in their places to get manufacturings over there. Malaysia. But when it comes to India, we'll have big problem on land. Given the land versus population ratio, we are at a very bad state. And being given that as a scenario, I would say India could refrain from getting into too much of manufacturing and just be with just basics of manufacturing, for a very simple reason. The pollution in terms of land, water, and everything will increase, and the kind of people that we have to cater to, it will become a nightmare for everyone to handle that. Though economically it may be beneficial, but it will not be good for life for sure.
Thank
That's
you,
my
Siddharth.
personal opinion. I may be wrong, but it's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I do understand. So that's the point I was looking into, because our webinar number 2 we had with the industrialist Kishore from Srivatsa. So he was also telling the same point that now all other countries are actually throwing China and looking for other opportunities elsewhere, and India can really reap about that. But and again, he said that India may not be capable to cope up with the manufacturing style what China has. So my point is that thinking manufacturing will happen in India is a really it's in just paper or whatever news. And is it wise to start up something new at this time?
That's a good question. So it's like again, anything that we start, let the market drive what we are starting. That's the politically right answer I would like to give. but yeah, it's always late to start. So we should have started yesterday is my answer for should we start. But what to work on is a good challenge. But manufacturing is definitely a thing that we could look at. But again, not everything, but certain things we can surely look at even now. But right now, the biggest challenge is the cash flow. Though government is promising big numbers, uh, that numbers are hardly the numbers that we should actually work with. Uh, I'm sure Navinanna Vasanthanna has an idea what I'm telling right now. So,
Thank you, Siddharth. Thank
yeah.
Hi, Satish here. Hi, Siddharth.
Hello, Anna.
Hey, many more happy returns of the day to start with.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
மீட்டிங் ரெக்கார்ட் பண்ண ஆரம்பிச்சோடனே பல பேர் நானும் பார்க்கறேன் இந்த பொலிட்டிக்கலி கரெக்டா இருக்கணும் உஷாராவே பேசுறீங்க எல்லாரும். ரெக்கார்டிங் பட்டன் ஆன் பண்ணாம இருந்திருந்தா ஒருவேளை எல்லாம் ஃப்ரீயா பேசியிருப்பீங்களோ என்னமோ.
இல்ல சார், லைக் ஈவன் ரெக்கார்டிங் இல்லனாலும் நம்ம திங் இஸ் திஸ் ஆர் அவர் ஒபினியன்ஸ்ல சார். அப்போ டிபேட் மட்டும் தான் ட்ரிகர் பண்ணும், ஆனா it will not give a productive insight out of it.
Yeah, so very true, absolutely, very true. Okay, Siddharth, I have a quick question on your footwear. Okay, yeah. I mean, probably you must have covered in your presentation. I mean, repeat me just for a larger benefit. So, in the wearable, like footwear, what kind of data it is actually collecting from a human body? Like, how different it is from your regular? Like, you have wearable watches and other stuff, right? So, what exactly this does different?
Very different, Anna.
Okay.
So basically, here we will be looking on the foot temperature, foot pressure, and things like that. And we are also working on a parallel thing where we can take heart rates from the right leg as such. So in Eindhoven triangle, where one of the electrode is in your right leg. And we are looking at how can we consider that aspect so that the wearable watch thing also gets covered with us. But additionally, it's always good to have all those features within our footwear so that people don't have to buy too many things. And at the same time, we will challenge our competitors as well.
But in terms of actual usage, see, watch is something like you just did clarify. I mean, I presume your device is capturing more than a watch could do. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
But in terms of usage, watch is quite comfortable. Like people today sleep with those watches, right?
I mean, but what about this shoes is like I'm not sure how much you are aware of the foot pain that we are talking about.
Okay.
Like for example, when we normally do an welcome. Sorry. Yeah, so like when it comes to foot, especially let's say a little age, or when we are walking too much or standing too much, we'll have this plantar fasciitis. So basically your heels will pain a lot, right? And this is one of the common thing in Indian population, especially where a lot of people have this heel pains, because of which a lot of activities cannot happen. Now for this heel pain especially, if you can imagine a footwear which can actually look at this pressure and at the same time do a small massaging as well.
Self-healing type? Real-time healing?
Yes. Right. Okay. So all these things are the possibilities that we are looking at. And if I'm not sure how much you know of my past work, we are working in neuromodulation. So when in version 3, by the time we get into medical properly, if our therapy gets inside the shoe, it will be kind of a real-time treatment for patients who are suffering from this kind of pain, from diabetic foot ulcers, from arthritis specifically. So all these things will happen.
Okay. So and for it to collect the data, obviously you need to be wearing it, right? So besides the food related only, general, your heart rate and other stuff. So it is not going to monitor throughout, right? Like a watch.
So ideally, if we see any person who is working, we always have a footwear in a leg. Or if you are going to a walk, right, you will be having either your normal shoes. So in fact, I have a smartwatch here. I hardly wear it all the time. I wear it just when I'm going out. But when I'm at home or anything else, we don't even wear it. Or sometimes I forget to wear it. But shoes, we never forget to wear.
Okay.
When shoes or chappal, any footwear, we never forget
Correct,
to wear. We
correct.
never go barefoot.
Right.
So as a wearable, it comes as a natural blend, whereas watches are not a natural blend to your wearables. And
Got it.
these days, especially earlier, yes, watches then people used
Yeah.
to wear. That time it was very good, but now that mobile phone has come in, we all just read mobile phone data, right?
Correct. True.
Yeah.
Sure, Siddharth. All the very best.
Thank you, Anna.
Sure.
Yes.
Very well delivered, Siddharth. I could
Thank you.
see your experience both as a startup entrepreneur, as a PhD scholar, all perceptions and dimensions of Siddharth got reflected in the presentation. Well done,
Thank you,
Siddharth.
ma'am. Thanks a lot, ma'am.
I really wish you all the very best for this footwear to come out successfully, because I really understand at times a very, very small pain at the foot, and the பாதத்துல அடியில கொஞ்சமா வலிக்கும் போது that could also probably hinder your walking.
Yes.
So if you could give a little comfort feeling, probably more people will be motivated to do the walking when the problems get addressed then and there. I think as a consumer product, it would really be good. I wish that it comes out well and it comes out at the earliest as well. So that all the very, very best.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you. Yeah. Any other questions?
Any timeline you have in plan, Siddharth? When is this likely to be available in the consumer
The
market?
first model we are end of this year as a MVP. That is the first pilot, not the mass production. By end of this December or early next year. But we are planning to hit the Kickstarter campaign by October end. So that's an idea, because we are looking at the global market here and not only just India. So in fact, we have onboarded consultants from Europe, Dubai, US, who could actually give us give us understanding of the user perception and how the user would work. So in fact, Navina is one of my software consultant, and we've been talking about it for a while now. And Arunana was also there in the call, so he's supposed to help me in regulation. So yeah, a couple of them within this call.
Very good, Siddharth. Nice to hear that. At least in the pilot program, in the session attend பண்ண எல்லாரையும் நீங்க consider பண்ணிக்கலாம்.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
For organizing this, it's a wonderful session. I missed the previous sessions. This is my first session that I'm attending to, but I'm quite happy.
Oh, thank you. This is the fifth session, and
sixth நினைக்கிறேன்ல.
Fifth. This is the fifth one,
Right.
and already another next three meetings are already been scheduled.
Very good.
So we hope hereafter we'll be able to launch a monthly chat, so that உங்களுக்கு எப்ப டைம் கன்வென்ட் நீங்க பிளான் பண்ணிக்கலாம்.
Oh, right. Cool.
Right.
Hi, Siddharth, Veena here. So, just like Satish said, I've also I'm also attending it on it today. Somehow made it up, and it is quite, really, really interesting. I was wondering what are you going to talk on the lockdown, enna solla poringa abingra madri, but it was very interesting the way you took the presentation from overall stats to your product. I think it was really good, and all the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thanks a lot.
Do we have other questions? Siddharth, good news to you. Your foot has been attracted and is attracted by everyone. That's a good news for you. And and in case if there is no other questions, shall we go for the closing remarks?
I guess we are good, right? I believe no other questions, sir. Yeah.
Thank you, Siddharth. It has been pleasure in hosting you. SREC Alumni Association is proud to have you as a member, and thank you for coming in with the invite, because we made a very short invite to you, and thank you for accepting that and making it the webinar more interesting with your enchanting speech. Thank you. I thank the management, SNR Charitable Trust, and Principal Ma'am, a patron, for encouraging SREC Alumni Association to go on with webinars. And this is the 5th webinar. And we, as President right now said, and 3 more webinars in this month, and the topics may be a bit different, but something related to COVID and other opportunities. The next in pipeline is webinar from Singapore. It is on the opportunities after COVID-19 in Singapore, and been hosted. It is being delivered by the first batch, Karpaya Palani from Singapore. He's been there for almost 20 years now. And very next webinar after that, the 7th one, is again from Singapore, from Ram Kumar is the speaker. He's also from the first batch of SREC. And that is how we have scheduled. And thanks for everyone for joining us among the busy schedules. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.